start the tours down the north side of the building. It's also referred to as the outbound side of the building. You'll notice docks on the right-hand side. This is where we load all of our trailers and tractors that go out and deliver to our customers on a daily basis. As we head down the building, you'll see on the left-hand side, we have our cooler. It's about a 32,000 square foot cooler. We harbor about 100% of our kegs and most of the craft beer that our suppliers require us to keep cold. The rest of our inventory is kept on the ambient floor where it's not needed to be kept cold. The temperature in the cooler is kept anywhere between 34 and 37 degrees on a daily basis. As I stated, we keep about 100% of our kegs in the building, which you'll see behind me on my left. And then on my right is a lot of packaged product as well. You'll notice the same thing on the floor. All of our product is kept in a designated location, which is outlined on the roof of the building. Here you'll see our charging line. This is where we keep all of the industrial operating equipment that we use in the warehouse. Our order pickers, tow motors, pallet jacks. Just outside of that is our staging area. This is where you'll see completed pallets of product that the Vertique machine built that are staged this morning to be loaded later this afternoon when the trailers they belong on return from the market. The next part of the tour is going to be primarily focused on the Vertique machine. In layman's terms, the Vertique machine is a series of conveyors that take the cases we pick from point A to point Z. It actually also palletizes our cases and shrink wraps those cases. The first area you'll see a Vertique we're walking up on right now is known as the chase aisle. The chase aisle harbors our lowest volume SKUs in the building, and it's called the chase aisle because you'll notice there's no conveyor here that's going to take the cases where they need to go as they're being picked. So in order to pick a case from the chase aisle, you have to hop on a piece of equipment and physically go chase that case. Cases that are picked in the chase aisle will eventually be introduced into the Vertique machine on either the bottle line or the flow rack, which are the next two areas we're going to see now. Flow rack and bottle line are to my right here. The bottle line is the bottom portion of this section on the left-hand side. It's where we pick our individual bottles. We allow our customers to order wine by the full case or by the full bottle. If it's picked by the bottle, it's picked on this line here. As the associates grab stickers off a printer that tells them what location to go to and how many bottles to pick from that location and place in the box. Around the bottle line then is the flow rack. You'll see flow rack B here denoted by the B's. Flow rack A and C is up top. They all operate the same exact way. It's our middle volume type SKUs in the building. Associates who work in the flow rack read the TV screens in flow rack, which tell them which locations to go to and how many cases from those locations to pick and put on the line. Of all the positions in the warehouse, some are a lot more labor intensive than others, as some are more mentally taxing. The flow rack is an example of a more mentally taxing position. There's some computer systems you have to use, some auditing you have to do, some problem solving you have to figure out, and so forth. Next, you'll see our outfeed lines. These are the two lines that are to my right, and this is where the finished pallets of products come off the machine and are either staged somewhere in the warehouse to be loaded at a later time, or loaded directly onto a trailer if the trailer's back from the market in time. There are two of them. I'm standing in front of the longer of the two. The shorter of the two is here. And depending on where those pallets belong in the warehouse is based which line that pallet comes off of. This northwest corner of the building we're in now is referred to as the returns portion of the building. To my left here is the canopy, otherwise known as the truck garage. During the day, all of the trucks that go out and service our customers return to this garage, and we have a team of people who are responsible for reconciling everything from the trucks as they come off, and then simultaneously reloading those trucks with the product that's coming to us from the Vertique machine. Behind me, this is where we sort everything that comes back from the trade. We collect things like empty kegs, empty pallets, mispicked product, out-of-date product. Everything has a home in the building, and this is where the returns team will sort those based on where they belong and then eventually return them to where they belong in the warehouse. Everything on my left now is backstock, so this is all excess inventory that our replenishers are picking from in order to fill the pick locations in the warehouse that our folks are picking from. On my right then is what we refer to as the vertical towers. This is also a production position in the Vertique system. It used to be our highest volume SKUs in the building until June of 2016 when we put in an expansion on that included HQS, which is also one of the areas you'll see today during the tour. As I mentioned before, the towers used to be our highest volume SKUs in the building. And the reason for that was because they could harbor a full pallet of product in each location. Those associates who work in the towers are responsible for really just keeping what we call these chutes full of product. And I know that this chute is full because there's a case stopped right here. As somebody would order, in this example, White Claw, these trays would automatically drop and the cases will tinker down until they eventually end up on the conveyor on the ground. And then that conveyor will take the case where it needs to go, ultimately leading to the palletizers, which is what we'll see at the end of the tour. Folks who use or work in the towers use these lights to guide them. If the light's green, there's enough product in the location to fulfill all the orders that are currently calling for it. If it goes out, it's getting low. If it turns red, it's really low. And if it's blinking red, it's completely out of product. One thing about the Vertique machine is every area, including the ones you've seen so far and the ones you'll see next, have to work at the same rate. If any of them fall behind, the others shut down until that area catches back up. The way the towers fall behind is blinking red lights. So essentially people who work in the towers, their job is to eliminate all blinking red lights. And they do so by keeping the chutes full. And you'll notice some downstack product on the ground. That's a habit we get into as well to give us some safety stock between the pallet that was brought to them and the cases that are in the location. If you follow me down this aisle, you'll notice here there's 3 levels to the towers. We refer to them as Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Alpha is our top level, Bravo is our middle level, and Charlie, which is what we were just on, is our bottom level. We have anywhere between 7 and 8 people working in the towers at any given time. Again, on my right now is the towers you just saw. On the left is more backstock, so that's more inventory that we keep on the floor for our replenishers to replenish pick locations with. We keep roughly about 18 days of inventory on the floor at any given time. You'll notice on the roof of this building locations. Every item in the building is located based on those placards and maintained that way in our inventory control system. Next up is HQS. This is part of that June of 2016 expansion I mentioned. It now harbors our fastest moving SKUs in the entire building, our 60 fastest moving SKUs in the building. Just like the towers, it has 3 levels. The difference between this and the towers is that instead of those cases tinkering down those chutes, as we call them, to a conveyor, these cases just travel horizontally across the conveyors that automatically turn on as our customers order each SKU that's kept there. This would be an example of one of the more physically demanding positions in the warehouse. Folks in this position spend upwards of their entire shift, with the exclusion of breaks, on their feet, handling cases of beer and wine that can average anywhere between 25 and 50 pounds, upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 times a shift. This is typically the best view to get an idea of how Vertique comes together as a whole. So far on the tour, you've seen the chase aisle, the flow rack and the bottle line. You've seen the towers, you've seen HQS. All of the cases that are being picked in each of those areas are traveling up by way of these spirals. To my right is an example of a spiral. Once the cases make it up top, they end up on the conveyors that are on the upper mezzanine of the building, which you'll see behind me, about 18 to 20 feet in the air. That is where the system's logic places the cases in the correct order so that we can assure they'll end up on the right pallet to eventually be loaded on the right truck and delivered to the right customer. Before the cases are palletized, they come down these inclines behind me to the big yellow robot arms of what we call palletizers. The palletizers are really good at one thing, making flat, even layers of product. If it knows that it's going to get a combination of cases that will come to it that will not make a flat, even layer, those cases are automatically discharged to a Handstack location. That's the location we'll see next. This is an example of a Handstack location. As I mentioned, the palletizers are going to build a pallet with flat, even layers of product. And if it's going to get a combination of cases coming to it that it knows it cannot make a flat, even layer, it's going to discharge those cases down to a Handstack position. And when the case, or the pallet rather, comes out to the Handstack position, the associate there is going to place on top what belongs. It's a little bit like Tetris. Because a human can figure out how to situate the cases in the right orientation, that's who's doing it rather than the robotic arm that can't figure that much out, okay? We'll go upstairs and you'll kind of see the whole system come together as a whole. This is one of the best views of the Vertique machine as a whole, because it kind of brings to light how every different area of the machine really comes together at the end. So to recap, you've seen the bottle line and flow rack, you've seen the chase aisle, you've seen the towers and HQS, you've now seen Handstack, all of which have cases actively being picked from them and ending up at the palletizers that are right below me. After the cases are palletized, they end up on a pallet, and that pallet is lowered and discharged out to the Handstack associate, where the Handstack associate is responsible for putting some number of cases on top of that pallet that the palletizer already built. After they do so, then they'll click a button and the pallet will go down the conveyor to the stretch wrappers. The stretch wrappers will wrap that pallet 7 to 10 times based on the weight and height of the pallet. From there, the pallet hangs a U-turn, and if you remember, ends up on that outfeed line, which is where our forklift operators will take the pallets off of, and either stage them somewhere in the warehouse to be loaded at a later time, or they may load them directly onto a trailer if the trailer is already returned for the day from the trade. The last spot we'll see on the tour is a non-production spot. I'll take you over to the south side of the building, also known as our inbound side of the building, and you'll get an idea of what receiving looks like, okay? We're gonna go down the same way we came up. We're heading down one of our backstock aisles now towards the south side of the building, which again is where the receiving department lies. We've now traversed almost all of the nearly 512,000 square foot warehouse. So needless to say, our warehouse folks get their steps in every day. One of the perks of the job, in my opinion. So we've arrived, as I mentioned. This is now the south side of the building. Our inbound side of the building will receive anywhere between 20 and 50 loads a day here, depending on seasonality. Obviously in the summertime, we're a lot busier than in the winter. If you look down to my left, you'll see the receiving office. This team is a team of about 7 members who will receive loads that are scheduled with us via an online website and then located somewhere in the warehouse relative to their pick location. You've now seen the entire warehouse, at virtually every Vertique production area, as well as the non-production areas like returns and receiving.